Bonjour mes amis, il est vendredi aujourd'hui et j'apprends même français, mais je ne parle pas très bien français. I'm not going to do the whole video in French, don't worry, I'm not nearly that good yet. But this is a video about French because earlier this week I was a bit critical of a certain grammatical feature in French. I don't mean in my video about French and German. I was actually very excited in that video, but in my personal studies of the language, I came across a certain grammatical feature that I didn't like, and I vented a bit because it confused me. I vented a bit to one of my friends who studies French and some of my friends who don't study French, but I wanted to vent to them anyway. I think I called it the worst feature I've come across in any of the 4 languages I've learned. I was being a bit dramatic. But yeah, I called French a deeply unserious language because of this feature. But I've kind of made peace with this feature now. And I feel like I should apologise to the language. Not to France as a whole. The country doesn't deserve an apology, but the language does. Sorry, that was mean. I live in the UK, I can't really say anything. So, what's this feature I'm talking about? And why have I made peace with it? Basically, it's about word order. So, you know how some languages are like subject, verb, object? That's what English does, you know. It's I see the dog, not I the dog see. Other languages are like subject, object, verb. Some languages are, I can't remember what, you know, there's some other common basic sentence structures you see in different languages. Now, I thought, okay, cool. French is a bit like English and German in that the fundamental sentence structure is subject, verb, object. Obviously in German, some of you may know the second verb does weird things and like subcons and whatever, but the fundamental sentence structure is the same, I thought, between these 3 languages. And I think it's technically true to say that is the case, but I then started trying to teach myself about direct object pronouns. And what that means is, if you have just referred to a certain noun, and then in your next sentence you're referring to it again. If it's a noun like the tall building over there, you know, it's a noun phrase made up of multiple words. It's a bit clunky to say that twice. So an example of that would be like, if someone asks you a question like, are you going to the green building over there tomorrow? And if you wanted to reply and say, yes, I am going to that building over there tomorrow, it would be really clunky. So it makes a lot more sense to replace that noun that you've already referred to with a direct object pronoun. For example, yes, I'm going there tomorrow, or I'm going to it tomorrow, or did you see your mother-in-law yesterday? Yes, I saw her, instead of yes, I saw my mother-in-law yesterday. You know, it just saves a lot of time. That's what a direct object pronoun is. French does allow you to do this, which is good, but I found out that when you replace a noun with a direct object pronoun, it changes the word order. So, I'm going to try and explain this like winging it. I don't have any, you know, revision resources on me, so I might explain this wrong. I'm sorry if I do. But I think it's that, say, for a really simple example, if it was like, very unlikely anyone would actually say this, but if the question was like, do you like carrots? I think that would be like, tu aimes des carottes, or tu aimes les carottes? And then the answer, you could answer, yes, I like carrots. Oui, j'aime les carottes, or des carottes. I need to check which one that would be, but that's irrelevant. However, you could also replace this with a direct object pronoun, but unlike in English, that changes the word order for some reason. So it becomes, oui, je les aime. Which was really weird to wrap my head around, because I'm like, it's the same object. Why does the word order change? Because it doesn't in English or in German. When you replace a noun with a direct object pronoun, you could just put the pronoun in the place of where the noun was, and it doesn't change the rest of the sentence, but in French it does. And I was like, this is so stupid. This is this rule makes no sense. I don't like it. Deeply unserious language. I mean, to be fair, I was half joking, but it did also annoy me. Now I've reflected on it, I haven't. It's not that I've suddenly like had an enlightening moment and I've realised why that rule makes sense. But I understand it a lot more because I've realised it's kind of analogous to a feature of Welsh, and that, at least for me, makes it a lot easier to process and like think of the two as kind of the same. So in Welsh, again, I might explain this wrong. I'm not an expert in Welsh grammar. But I think in Welsh, when you replace a noun phrase with a direct object pronoun, for example, to take a similar kind of sentence, if you say like, do you like your teacher? And you wanted to reply, yes, I like him. The question would be like, wyt ti'n hoffi dy athro di? And instead of saying, yeah, dwi'n hoffi fy athro I, you could replace that with, yeah, rydw i'n ei hoffi o. Now, what's interesting is Welsh is kind of doing both types of sentence here, because there's a part, in a sense, the pronoun is formed of two parts. One of them goes before the verb and one of them goes after. Rydw i'n ei hoffi o. The a and the o are both part of the pronoun him in this case, which now that I talk it through, that's not really analogous to what French is doing, because, as I said, Welsh is doing both things at the same time. But the fact that in Welsh there's at least a part of this pronoun that goes before the verb, that helps me to sort of make a connection between that and the French system where the whole pronoun goes before the verb. Therefore, I can imagine that the le or the la or the le that goes before the verb in French when you use direct object pronouns is kind of analogous to the a part of the pronoun in Welsh in the example sentence I gave. I don't know, it's very unlikely that this video is going to help anyone else to understand French object pronouns, because you would have to already speak some Welsh and know some Welsh grammar for this analogy to be in any way helpful, but it's helpful to me, and I just want to get that out there and clarify this, and apologise to the French language. Your word order isn't as stupid as I thought it was earlier in the week. However, I do have another question. There's something else about French that I now found very questionable, and it may well be that the same thing happens, and once I do a bit of research I no longer think this is stupid. But from the elementary grammar work I've done, I've gathered that there's articles in French are classified into three types of article: definite, indefinite, and partitive. And I was like, what's a partitive article? Because, at least as far as I know, I've never heard anything in English or German referred to as the partitive article. So I was like, what can that be? And apparently it's just when you say like de la or du or de, and it's basically a contraction of de, the preposition for kind of, and the definite article. And I was like, that's not a different kind of article. That's just the definite article with a preposition. We do that all the time. Like, are you gonna class o and la as another kind of article as well? Are you gonna class every preposition with the definite article as a different article? Like in German, the equivalent of de la or du or de would just be vom or von den or von der. Like, is that a different kind of article? No, that's just a preposition with the definite article. Why is the partitive article classed separately? I don't get it. I'm going to have to research this, and I'm sorry in advance if it turns out there's a really obvious answer and I'm just being stupid. So yeah.